Hey guys, T7 here, got a video today. Wow, so Yu-Gi-Oh! Organization, which we know has leaked a lot of good stuff over the last few months since it's been made. They leaked the Pendulum Summoning, which we've been waiting for quite a while now, since it was announced a couple of months ago. It's interesting, it's a very weird mechanic. I don't think anyone is anticipating this mechanic, but apart from that, they also introduced a couple of new major rule changes coming to the OCG. It's basically three things. The OCG rulings, which makes two of them, and the Pendulum Summoning, which I want to talk about in today's video. Right, so the two OCG rulings, which I'll go over quickly. The first one is that the player going first cannot draw on the first turn. So you start off with 5 cards, and whoever goes second will have 6 on their draw phase. It's okay. I mean, like, when people thought about doing this, like on Pojo, discussing whether or not that would be a viable option to improve the game, a lot of people brushed it aside, saying that even though player 1 gets the ability to set their cards and stuff like that, the fact is that you are still 1 card behind whoever goes second. So going second it makes it easier to OTK, because you have more cards on your field. You generally just have like more options as opposed to the guy going first. So you have, I don't know what, 1/6 less possibility of your OTK not going through. So that's why it was brushed aside. So for the OCG to implement something like this, just saying going first, you can't draw for your first turn, I don't know if that's really a good idea. There's a lot of bad negative sides to that. Depends on how they go about changing the game so that going first and not drawing is still okay, but we'll see. And the second ruling which the OCG have implemented is that field spells can now be on both sides of the field. So beforehand you could have a field spell fight where dragons would used to play Dragon's Ravine, and if you're playing a mirror match, then you would go Dragon's Ravine to take their Dragon Ravine off, and then they would Dragon Ravine your Dragon Ravine. So you'd basically be fighting for the field spell. Whoever's got the field spell allows them to dump their dragons. So generally, getting to your field spell as quick as possible was the best thing to do. However, now you can activate a field spell, and you generally don't have to worry about it being MST too much, because they generally want to keep their field spell on the field. So before it resolves, they could MST it, and then you'd be able to keep their field spell on the field. So now you can both have field spells on the field, which affects your own side, because a lot of field spells on the game now, which only affects the player that activates it rather than affects both players. Because back in the original Yu-Gi-Oh, back in the first series, the field spells actually affected the entire field, which makes a lot more sense. But now they only affect the player that uses it. So now that we've got the OCG rulings out the way, which are going to come about on the March the 21st, when the new starter deck comes out, we're going to go into Pendulum Summoning. Now, it's kind of hard to explain what Pendulum Summoning is, but it does mean that the playmat that we know of, the zones, the spell card zones, the deck zones, everything's going to be slightly moved so that you can fit these 2 different zones that will be just underneath the graveyard zone and the field spell. So there'll be 2 extra zones on each side of the normal playing field. So these are pendulum zones. There are special monsters which you can summon, which are placed into the pendulum zone. Obviously you can normal summon them as normal monsters and put them in the monster card zone, but you can also pendulum summon them, well, not pendulum summon, but you put them in the zones, these pendulum zones, and they have different effects. So they have different effects depending on where you put them on the field. Also, these monsters have a weird kind of thing about them. They also have, like, on the card itself, which I'll have on the screen, they also have these scales, these blue and red scales. You can place these cards in the pendulum zone, and if they do, they become spell cards instead of monsters. So they are treated like spell cards. So if you dark hole, they don't get blown up, okay? Because they're not monsters, they're treated as spells. Once you have a pendulum monster in each pendulum zone, you can perform a pendulum summon. These little scales on each side also have a number. If a pendulum monster has 8 and the other one has 1, then you can special summon a level 7 or lower monster from your hand. So you can summon big monsters that were originally more difficult to summon, but you can summon them without having to tribute. So you can special summon these monsters from your hand, and then the pendulum monsters, after they've been used to special summon a big monster or whatever monster you can summon with the scales, they go into the extra deck face up. Whether or not they do anything that's in there, I don't really know right now. You can only do this one time because obviously the Pendulum Monsters get put away, but if you can summon extra Pendulum Monsters on the same turn, you can't do the same summon again. So you only get to special summon a big monster from your hand once a turn. So you can't just spam your field with tons of monsters, because there will be some Pendulum Monsters where when they are put into the extra deck, you can put them back into the Pendulum Zone. So I'm sure that at some point Konami will abuse this mechanic, so when they get sent to the graveyard as a monster card, they can be put in the Pendulum Zone and then they get their Pendulum effects. Some of these Pendulum effects are going to be very, very good because they will be able to dodge standard things. You know, obviously while they're in the Pendulum Zone, they won't be able to attack because they are spells. So it depends, you know, you have to sacrifice field presence for extra effects on the field. So it depends on what you want to do. So there's a lot of versatility in how the cards will work. At this particular moment, we don't have 100% confirmation of how Pendulum Summons will actually work. So it will be interesting to see how Konami takes this new mechanic and goes with it. But one thing we do know is that it doesn't really involve the extra deck too much. It's not a brand new monster in the extra deck because our 15 card extra deck was getting full enough as it is. So it's very good that they're actually keeping to the main deck now, so that we can still Xyz and Synchro without feeling like our extra decks are cluttered. You can also special summon, when you Pendulum Summon, you can also special summon either from your hand a monster, or you can special summon a monster with a level. So I believe that you cannot special summon Xyz monsters, but you can special summon Synchro monsters, because Synchro monsters have levels, Xyz monsters have ranks. So whether or not the mechanic will allow you to special summon Xyz monsters, that we don't know for now. But I think they will keep releasing Xyz monsters, because you can special summon these monsters from your extra deck and from your hand, and then you can Xyz summon these massive monsters. So there will be Pendulum Monsters that have a scale of like 12, and then there'll be one that has 1, so you can special summon level 11 monsters and then Xyz summon really big Xyz monsters without much effort. So that would be quite a cool little gimmicky mechanic thing. So whether or not they will take that into a new direction, what they will do with that, we don't know yet. So if you want to see any of the information about what's in the V Jump, you know, talk about Pendulum Summons, talk about how the field will look, what the Pendulum Monsters will look like, you know, and the new stuff that's coming out in the starter deck, hop onto the Yu-Gi-Oh organization website, which I'll have in the description down below, and you'll be able to see all the new stuff. And I hope to see you guys in a few days. Hopefully DevPro will update their card pools, so you'll be able to play Evols and all that new stuff. And until next time, the TCG lover is hot.